When we think about evil and suffering in the world, we can divide it into two categories. The first I'm going to call natural evil or natural suffering, and the other is moral evil and the suffering caused by that. Now, the difference here is that natural evil are the evils, in a sense, that can be attributed to nature. I'm thinking of things here like tornadoes and hurricanes and earthquakes and disease, natural calamities. And this would include the calamities of the cruelty in the animal kingdom. This is all, if you will, the evils of nature. And then you have a moral evil. So let me talk in this segment about natural evil, because when you begin to look at these things individually, and in this book, What's So Good About God, I have a couple of chapters where I go into great detail about them. But here I just want to take the single example of earthquakes. Again, something that seems kind of pointless. The earth kind of cracks open and causes an earthquake. Houses tumble down. People are smashed to death. Calamities are caused by earthquakes. But why do we have earthquakes? Well, for centuries, nobody knew. Just seemed like earthquakes were one of those like horrible things that happen, almost like a defect in the architecture of God's creation. But now we know that earthquakes occur, and this is actually the way in which modern science comes to the benefit of apologetics. The atheists think that science is their weapon. No, science cuts both ways, and there is scientific evidence that supports and helps to explain such questions as why we have earthquakes. Well, it turns out that plate tectonics, which is the movement of giant plates under the Earth's surface. It's the movement of those plates that causes the earthquakes. Now, this plate tectonics, as it turns out, is absolutely essential for the existence of life on Earth, and particularly of human life, mammalian life, the life of mammals. Why? Because without plate tectonics, the Earth and the oceans would not be separated from one another. In fact, the oceans, which, by the way, make up about 70% of the entire surface of the Earth, would swallow the land, and would swallow the land to the depth of 4,000 meters. So what that means is that without plate tectonics, we would all be drowned. I mean, humans would all be drowned. Of course, it would be good for the fish, but there would be, we would lose most of the biodiversity of the planet. And it turns out that plate tectonics does all kinds of other things in addition to this. We need carbon dioxide. Without it, the Earth would basically resemble Antarctica. And it's the plate tectonic system that apparently recirculates all the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, keeping the level of greenhouse gases and therefore the Earth's temperature stable. I'm now quoting from a textbook which says the tectonic system serves as a planetary thermostat, helping to regulate the Earth's climate and preventing the onset of scorching or freezing temperatures that would make life, and certainly human life, impossible. So what am I getting at with this? What I'm getting at is that plate tectonics, the very process that gives rise to earthquakes, is also a process that is vital to sustain and enable human life on Earth. So in other words, we owe our existence, in part, to plate tectonics. And this is the point, is that God has created nature in a way that the good things that come out of nature also produce bacteria and viruses. By the way, most bacteria are beneficial. And so you have an ecosystem. That's the word we use today, and we use it mainly in the connection of the climate debate. But there is such a thing as an ecosystem, and the point about an ecosystem is a series of connected parts. Now, some people think that you can change the ecosystem by getting rid of parts over here and getting rid of parts over there. And yes, you can. But if you do that, you're going to get a different ecosystem. And the point I want to make is that at the deepest level, if you change the ecosystem, you're not only going to get a different world, but you're going to get different creatures that inhabit that world. So the point I'm trying to make here is that the world has the kind of creatures that it has now including that creature called man, who can not only live in the world, but can experience the world and experience suffering, and can also raise the question, why do we have evil? Why do we have suffering in the world? That kind of creature that has rationality, that has a consciousness, that has awareness. I mean, we're creatures that don't just inhabit the world. We're creatures that can interrogate the world. And my point is, those kinds of creatures are created and sustained in a certain type of environment. And the point I'm getting at is, if God wanted to make creatures like us, he created the environment that sustains creatures like us. Now, you might say, and I'll address this in the next section, wait a minute, God is omnipotent. He can do anything. So he could easily have made creatures like us, but created a different environment for us, and it would all be okay. And I think that this argument is nonsensical. It makes absolutely no sense. If God wanted creatures like us, he made us in the way that it is required to have creatures like us. And I'll discuss that further in the next segment.